Hi there, welcome back to a brand new Drive and Talk video with me, Ren. Today I want to talk about communication. Now everybody knows communication is very important in any type of relationship, right? But if everybody knows it, why are there so many relationships failing because of a lack of communication, improper communication? Because it should be pretty easy, right? But it's not. So let's dive into that. Why is communication so hard, right? So let's look at some basics and why they are hard and why they so often go wrong. So first of all, if we look at planning, simple planning, right? Things I want to do, things that my partner wants to do, whether this is a love relationship or a business relationship, and you communicate them with each other, right? Should be okay. Now, of course, sometimes, in my case, I forget some things, right? I forget I'm having lunch with a friend, or I don't forget that, but I forgot to communicate this work thing that I forgot to put on the calendar. So yeah, sometimes you forget stuff, but that's still okay. But I could, at some point evoke irritation with the other partner, right? With the other person. So that is a possibility. That could go wrong. But the real issues in communication is when you're not communicating things properly, and that's because you're afraid that if you communicate this directly, it might bring trouble in the relationship. Now this could be business, this could be personal, but let me give you an example on that. For example, you do not communicate that you think that the other person looks beautiful, or that you, if you're talking about a business relationship, that you appreciate the hard work this other person is doing, because you assume, remember, assumptions are the devil, you assume that this other person knows it. Now, if you do not speak out, if you do not say these things that you assume the other person knows, you are not communicating, period. And this is a really big thing, okay? If you're not communicating what you think is the obvious thing, you are missing out on a really big part of connection and communication, because that's what this is about, right? You are not communicating the things that you think are obvious, but they are not, because obvious things are only obvious to one specific person, right? Because maybe there are things that are obvious to the other person but are not obvious to you, and the same goes, of course, both ways. So how do you solve this problem, right? You solve this problem by, I would almost argue, to be over communicating. So if you over communicate, basically you say a lot of these things that I just mentioned, like, you look great today, or I appreciate you for doing all that hard work. And I know to some people this may sound and feel a little bit icky, right? Almost feels like what traditional thinking men might see as soft ass shit, right? But it is not. Believe me, it is very clear, thoughtful, and empathic communication. Now this is very important, but a lot of people miss out on that. And it is all communication. So in order to make this right, in order to solve this problem, is to over communicate, especially the things that you think that are obvious. Now, if you really think about this and go deeper, dive deeper into this, it's something that I'm very passionate about, is to really eliminate all types of assumption. So you don't assume anything anymore. If you do that, it will, first of all, give you a lot of freedom, because you will just be more accountable for communication, but also for living in general, right? To be really honest about this, and I can go really deep into this kind of stuff, is that you are trying to see the world for what it is. Because if you assume a lot, and 99% of all people assume a lot, if you do not assume anymore, or assume less, you will see the world for what it is. I assume that this car will take me home safely. That's an assumption, right? It has absolutely nothing to do with reality. If I look at this in the realest way possible, is that I cannot assume that I will arrive home safely. I hope so, but hoping has has absolutely nothing to do with reality, right? Assuming this thing has nothing to do with reality. The only thing that I can do, that I have control over, is to look at the road, look at my surroundings, and be very thoughtful of the actions that I'm doing, right? So if you take assumption out of the equation, you will automatically communicate more clearly, right? Because that way I will never assume anything about what another person might think. So I will immediately use more communication to acknowledge that, to find out, or to over communicate what I'm thinking or what this other person is thinking. So you might be more tempted to say, I think you look beautiful today, right? Or I appreciate all the hard work you're putting into this project, right? Or, you know, something that I say a lot, and again might sound very icky to some people, is that when I meet up with my friends on any occasion, I might say to them, hey man, I'm so glad to see you today, and I'm so glad that you're my friend. And I know you might think, okay, that's a bit silly. My friends and me, we actually think that's extremely powerful. It's extremely powerful to build this really strong connection between me and my friend, right? And if you know me and you know the world that I live in, my friends are pretty tough, pretty well trained physically and mentally, alpha leaders, right? And I'm not kidding, you know. These are people who run businesses, who run families, who train in the gym very hard, who win and who run, you know, a lot of miles every week, who enter competitions, who travel all around the world. If you watch my videos, you know what kind of people I run with. Entrepreneurs, you know, thought leaders, you know, and we all think that these kinds of things actually make us stronger. To actually share and over communicate what you're thinking and what you're feeling, right? And we believe, and I'm very interested if you're still watching this video, what you think about this, that people who do not communicate or communicate poorly are actually, I don't want to make a big thing out of this, but are actually people, I don't want to say who are weak, but who still have a lot to learn, right? If you think that this type of communication is weak or soft, right? It means that you're putting up a front. It means that you're under communicating and never really other people how you feel and what the situation is, right? Because if I'm telling somebody that I'm glad that he or she is my friend, I'm actually being extremely real and extremely honest. And I think that is something that a lot of people could learn and should learn. Now, of course, if you're doing something like that, you're also putting yourself out there when it comes to vulnerability. It doesn't feel vulnerable to me, but I think if you're just starting out, if you're just transitioning into communicating more about these kinds of things, you might feel vulnerable. I do not, because the people I run with, like I just told you, we see this as strength and as real power, right? To communicate clearly what you are feeling. It could also be the other way around, right? And I could say to my friend, like, maybe, you know, we're doing something, and I'm like, hey man, I don't feel right about this. I'm not gonna continue doing this, or I'm not going to pursue this thing because it doesn't feel right. And he will ask me, okay man, why doesn't it feel right? And then we can have a meaningful conversation and meaningful communication about this thing. While if I would just ghost him or find some excuse about why I'm not doing this, why I don't want to continue this project or this thing, right? It could be a trip or whatever, right? Then, you know, you're actually damaging the relationship. So yeah, this was just something that I want to talk to you about. Over communicating, you know, not assuming, all of these things, you know, bringing down the assumptions, over communicating. These things will, in my opinion, strengthen relationships in any shape or form, and will push you and others around you to grow more as a person, and will make things better in the world. Thank you for watching. Hope to talk to you again soon.